SBCC is part of the Air Force's CCIT initiative to bring new technologies to needed areas in the Air Force. And we're very glad that you've chosen to come and be with us today and help us get after some of these issues in our military. A brief rundown of the order of events today. After some introductions with our TPOC, we'll have the slide there that you can look at the whole at the beginning with some information about the topic. I'm going to review some AFWERX guidelines and make sure that the constraints for today's meeting of the scope are clear. I think that'll help us all keep our questions concise and on point. And then our technical point of contact will begin to answer some of the questions that have been given to him prior to this meeting. Do know that you are also able to ask questions in the chat. No video or audio for our companies, but chat is fully accessible to you, and the TPOC will answer those questions today as well. So first, I'd like to start off by asking Mr. Larry Simpson to hop on for a moment and just introduce yourself as our TPOC today.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Larry Simpson. I work at Headquarters Global Strike Command. I'm in the Operations Division, the Special Activities and Capabilities Branch, and I am the center point of the EMP program for Global Strike in the Air Force.
Fantastic. Thank you, sir. I do want to let everybody know that this meeting is being recorded. We see there's a Fireflies disclaimer in the chat there. If you have any concerns, feel free to hop off the call, or you don't have to, type any questions in or anything, but it's there for our protection, also for your protection. We do want to make sure to add in the pre-release info. So hopefully at some point you'll see a link to the EMP pre-release submission that you can, if you haven't read it yet, I trust most, if not all of you have, but if you haven't, it'll take you there. Dayton and Joel, maybe we can work to get that up in the link for them in case that's needed. But again, just want to say welcome. Really glad you're here to help us get after the EMP hardening issues we're trying to work on. You guys are why the CCIT division at Air Force Global Strike exists, and why they've hired SBCC as an advisory and assistance provider. We're hired by them to help them find the new technologies they need to keep our warfighters on the cutting edge of technology and keep them in the fight and keep them superior. What we really like to do, we're constantly bringing new technology to their attention, but what we really like to do is find out from our Department of Defense friends what their needs really are, and help them get after the specific needs that they have resources for, manpower, and real interest in. And that's where you come in. This is a specific topic that's brought to us by the Air Force, and you guys are going to help us get after that. So we appreciate it. One of the main things that we try to do, and then we'll get on to the questions and answers in a moment, is it is the military's job to be a sharp sword ready to be wielded when called upon. It's not been their job to be excellent at working well with companies. And that's why they've hired us to help make that process easier for them to understand working with business, and to help you as companies learn how to speak Air Force and how to make that process a smoother process. It can be very lucrative working with the Department of Defense for your company, but it also can be a long and difficult task. And we're literally here to make that task smoother. We are hired by the Air Force, and so we are free to you as a service to help you work well together with them. Briefly, before we get started here, we do have some guidelines we need to talk about. We are in the pre-release period for this Phase 1 SBIR. And so the questions today have a very limited scope. We really need to be talking about questions that are limited to specific information related to improving the understanding of the topic requirements. We won't be getting into the weeds a lot. This is not a phase 2 SIBR where we're dealing with prototypes, or a phase 3 where we really look at starting to get into deep details and transition. This is a feasibility study. That's what the phase 1 SIBR is. Does your technology have a reasonable chance at meeting the needs of the requirements and what the Air Force is looking for? So we're going to keep those questions, try to limit it to that scope. No questions are allowed for advice or guidance on the approach to the solution. We have to keep it fair, not only for you, but for other companies who weren't able to be on the call. And our folks cannot receive additional materials, our TPOCs or SMEs. I can't do that. So just keep those things clear and in mind. And two, just for your protection, those of you who are here to be part of the call as companies, be mindful of how you ask your questions. We want you to get your questions answered, but we want you to protect your private material and keep it proprietary. So just be careful as you ask it, and we'll try to keep in mind if some things sounds like it's maybe proprietary, we'll try to avoid talking about it much so we can help you protect your material. Let's see. I do want to make sure that I read from the solicitation, make sure that we're on the same page. Let me apologize. I thought I had it pulled up right here. Yeah, so the phase 1 effort is to conduct, again, I will be really clear, this will help our whole call. The phase 1 effort is to conduct a feasibility study with government stakeholders to access your technology, to collaborate together, find a use case for which a prototype will be later developed in the phase 2 follow-on. During the feasibility study, we'll be collaboratively determining the specific application and thresholds and objectives that the technology needs to meet. Proposals are going to be evaluated based on certain criteria, which we'll go over in a second. Selections will be based on the determination of the overall technical value of each proposal, evaluation of the cost volume, with the appropriate methods of analysis given the contract type to be awarded. For the selection of the proposals most advantageous to the government, considering the following factors in descending order of importance. So what we're looking for is soundness, technical merit, innovation of the proposal approach, and its incremental progress toward topic or subtopic solution. Second, the qualifications of the proposed principal key investigators, supporting staff, and consultants. Qualifications include not only the ability to perform the research and development, but also the ability to commercialize the results. Those are all key components. And your strength in those areas will be part of the determination of selection. Third, the potential for commercial, government, or private sector application and the benefits expected to accrue from this commercialization. Finally, the scope of phase 1 proposals is a 6-month period of performance and a maximum award of $180,000. So that's kind of a brief overview. Phase 1 is simply this. The key area is the advanced EMP shielding and hardening technologies. Let me tell you the objectives and expectations, and then we'll get rolling on the questions and answers. The objectives in this phase 1 are to determine the feasibility of novel EMP shielding materials and hardening techniques, identify potential materials and methods, and conduct initial lab tests. The expectations are to develop preliminary material properties, design guidelines, and selection criteria for promising materials and techniques, such as nanocomposites, metamaterials, active shielding systems, etc.
Hello. Hey,
so
sorry, I'm double fisting Zoom interviews.
Somebody's got a hot mic. We need to see if we can get on that. So those are the kind of the introduction that I wanted to give. I'm sorry it's taken a few minutes, but we want to level set, make sure we're all on the same page. With that, Larry, Mr. Simpson, please go ahead and feel free to give your view of what you're looking to get after, any introductory comments you want to make, and then you can start working on those questions.
Copy that, sir. Thank you. Appreciate it. As I was going through this and looking at the key areas, one of the things that stood out is key area number 3, because I've been getting a lot of questions about key area number 3, and I don't think I want to make that the focus of this particular feasibility study. What I'm really looking at is mobile and fixed generators and HVAC hardening techniques, and data center room techniques as well. How we can proceed to look at that. Most of the questions that I did receive did correspond with key area 3, and I don't think I want to go that route at this time. Are there any questions up about that so far?
And while I'm giving them a moment to jump on, let me this good time to mention that there's a Q&A button at the bottom. You're probably all aware of this, but if not, please hit the Q&A button and tab at the bottom. That's where you can ask your live questions. We have a team that's going to be constantly monitoring those and make sure Mr. Simpson sees them. I've given a few minutes and haven't heard any questions on that, Mr. Simpson. So if you want to roll on, you can. A couple of questions are popping up. Feel free to take a look at those. But if you just want to roll on with the questions as you have them, you're certainly welcome to, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. DeRoller, yes, that is the target is Mill Standard 188-125, and also looking at 2169 Delta, which I can't get into because that's a higher classification. But if we need to do that at some other venue, we can.
All right, Mr. Simpson, if you would like to go ahead with the previous questions that were given to you, and then we can start trying to field and leave in the Q&A questions that are pertinent.
Yeah, the other questions that, like I said before, on the key area 3, I don't particularly think relate to what I'm really looking for. And I'm looking at the Q&A questions right now, trying to look at Mr. Miller's question. I want to try to answer that.
Sure.
Mr. Miller, no, sir, not at this moment. Not RF systems. Well, let me see. Impact to RF systems of the EMP events. I'm not really looking at specific systems themselves, unless you're talking about a data center type facility. I'm more interested in how to protect that facility, not maybe the equipment inside. But my focus on that will be a generator, fixed generator, and HVAC systems that support that data center as well. And Mr. Hanson, I'm not familiar with the mill standard that you're quoting. The mill standard 461, 464. Beyond 188, 125. Then my focus is the 188, 125.
Mr. Simpson, I've got a question here from that came in late via email, but it says the objective section states minimizing the potential damage from E1, E2, and E3 EMP components. End quote. We wonder whether the mitigation of damage from the 3 components is equally important, or does the Air Force have preference on one of them to be addressed first? Over.
Actually, we're looking at all 3 at this time. Do we want to try to minimize the all E1, E2, and E3?
Okay, and then another one I have is do you have the size and dimension requirements on enhanced shielding demonstration that you're looking to see in phase 1?
As far as generators, the size of the generators could be something as small as 30 kW all the way up to 1 megawatt. I mean, I don't have a standard particular size I'm looking at. I'm just looking at general applications that we can look at to help to minimize the effects of the EMP event if something was to happen for commercial style generators and HVAC systems. And then also, as I alluded to before, the data centers, inside a facility, if there's a way to maybe look at that room or look at protection for just a particular room instead of a whole facility, because we're trying to figure out ways how to do this economically.
Mr. Simpson, if it's agreeable, what I may do is just start going through the questions that were previously given, and if you feel like it's part of one of the sensor or other issues you don't want to address, then we'll just skip it. That'd be okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. One question is, can you please clarify if there's a specific test that is planned on evaluating these materials? 2.
Just the meal standards themselves. So as we stated earlier, 188, 125, and then 2169 Delta.
Okay.
Hey, Cody.
Yes, sir.
I'll jump in there too, right? And I would say that this is going to be a phase 1 effort. So for anyone that's interested in the topic, the period of performance is 6 months, and the maximum scope is for $180,000. The phase 1 process is to what you're essentially proposing whenever you make your submission is to conduct a feasibility study. So we're not necessarily looking to get far into the weeds about, okay, what are the thresholds and objectives that we're looking to see? What does, how do we pass or fail a certain test or do these other things? Realistically, the best way to have a very strong competitive proposal for this is to give an explanation of your technology and to include the commercial traction that you might have or other governmental traction, government customers, any sort of traction that you might have in the market, any successes that you have, as well as being able to make your best guess about, hey, this is how we would apply our technology to prevent EMP attacks or to EMP harden a data center or generators, I think is specifically what Larry's looking to get after. But and how you would apply your technology, maybe at a very, very high level conceptual. And then whenever you are selected for the phase 1 award, you're going to spend the next 6 months actually going through meetings with the TPOC, engaging with the government, and refining all of those thresholds and objectives and coming up with a test plan and a way forward. All of the work that you'll be doing, well, let's say the majority of the work, maybe like 99% of it, right, in terms of the technical stuff and the technical lift, will be done in the phase 2 effort, and that'll be a follow-on effort. So what we're looking at here is a phase 1, which is the scope should be limited to conducting, to basically putting out how you would accomplish that research project, and then giving a taste of your technology. Does that sound fair, Larry?
Yes, sir, that does. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Tim. Another question that came in, this is kind of quite specific. I'm not sure, but I'll just read it. Is there a lab that is experienced in these tests that our company can gain additional information from outside of the topic references?
I don't think I can provide that information at this time.
That's fine. Thank you, sir. What's the received RF power range that the sensor should be able to detect in dBm or volts per meter, volts or meters?
Yeah, the specifics, I can't get into that either.
Okay. What is the duration of the EMP event?
If you know about E1 and E2 and E3, then maybe that will help answer that question, but I can't answer that one specifically.
Very good.
Cody, on a lot of the specifics about the tests and things, right, that's also going to be covered in the phase 2. So ideally, I think if we can talk about a high level, giving into what you're looking for or around the problem. So, for example, it says, is there any specific desired response time to be taken into consideration from the moment an EMP event is detected to when mitigative actions are implemented?
And again, that goes back into sensing, and my focus right now, I want to focus on hardening and prevention. Protection of the equipment. I don't really want to focus on the censoring at this time.
All right.
All right. And then we have, says the question is, we've tested against solutions against both 188, 125 and 2169 and found that different shielding solutions can work for each. Which standard would be the ultimate determining criteria for acceptance?
Well, mill standard 188, 125 would be more towards facility and fixed sites. That's what I would like to focus on.
Are there other questions from companies while you have the TPOC on the line here that you would like to ask?
All right. How about, are you interested in lightweight modular composite EMP panelized systems that can be assembled to line a facility? And such systems could also be employed to create a generator housing that could generically enclose a variety of generators sized in OEM brands.
Yes, sounds like it would be some interest for this study.
Okay. Mr. James Fee says, are you looking to protect generators to E1 or only both E1 and E3? I don't consider E2 to be a huge threat to a generator if the generator is hardened to E1. However, E3 hardening tech is much different.
Yes, sir. E1 and E3 specifically. I didn't want to talk about the E2 very much.
Okay. I have an anonymous question about what are the major vulnerabilities in the current power grid system that we should address as a priority?
I can't talk about vulnerabilities. All I can say is that commercial generators, we're looking at having them, if we can, to work through an issue if there's a sunspot or an HIMP type event, to work through that.
Okay. And when you say that you can't talk to it, right? That's due to the classification level for those particular items, right? The vulnerabilities and things. Is that accurate?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Another anonymous question. So referenced in mill standard 2169 Delta, is it required for the company to have an active FCL?
Can you elaborate on FCL for me, Tim?
Facility clearance. Other than that, if that person who typed in that question, if maybe you can type in an augmented answer there, or
Yeah, and while they're typing that in, just to make sure that everybody's clear, maybe especially new companies, the discussion of vulnerabilities would happen at a later stage. If you're selected and we start moving to phase 2 and phase 3, Mr. Simpson can answer those questions when it's appropriate, but that's just not suitable for this topic of phase 1.
And I would like to add 2169 is a classified document.
Tim, do you see anything else coming in the Q&A that you'd like to bring to Mr. Simpson's attention?
Yeah, there's a few of them in here. Sorry, it's just kind of hard to manipulate everything, getting through them all. So what level of EMP protection are you looking for? 60 decibels? Or what would you consider to be the standard for this application? Or it says dB, sorry.
I'm not going to answer that. That's classified information.
Gotcha. Are there regions or parts of the grid that have historically been more susceptible to EMP events or disruptions?
No, and when I'm looking at this feasibility study, we can talk about across the country, so different climates, different atmospheric conditions. It's not just a specific fixed facility.
Okay. So another question here. It says, I heard Mr. Simpson say he's interested in mobile and fixed generator EMP hardening techniques. I assume this would fall under key area 1. Is that correct? And if so, can you give us some specifics about size of generators? For example, the typical CAT generator a hospital might have in place or specific to DoD needs?
Yes, sir. I addressed that later, and I know I did earlier. I know I did a wide range, but usually from 30 kW to 1 megawatt generators, because there's such a wide range out there currently.
Okay.
And I am interested and as you alluded to the hospital generators, I'm looking at that as well. But right now, I just want to focus on generic information.
And what's wrong with existing shielding solutions? Does JBSA EDI analysis blessed by DITRA shed light on the direction?
Yeah, I can't get to that level of classification.
Is there a preference on passive or active EMP protection, or both?
There is no preference as long as it's something that will help us work through the event to keep the systems up.
And should we assume the generator is operating when the hemp occurs? I ask because one would assume the generator comes on after the hemp event unless we have multiple. However, if the generator were not operating, the hardening might be easier.
Yes, sir. I'm gonna look at both. That it's on standby mode and could possibly be working depending on the situation.
In what ways has this topic been attempted previously, and can you talk about the results, the shortcomings, etc.? What are you looking for in a proposal as the most important thing to address? And what do you see the most commonly in proposals that holds them back? So I guess we could start with the first one. In what ways has this topic been attempted previously, and can you talk about the results, these shortcomings, etc.?
I am not sure how far this has been talked about in the past. I know DITRA has been working on some things along with other people in AFMC, but I can't specifically talk about that.
Okay, and then what are you looking for in a proposal as the most important thing to address?
Hardening techniques that we can utilize, like as I said, to work through an EMP event or hemp event or a natural event that could take place at any time. Something that will keep us operating and still moving forward.
And then what do you see them in most commonly in proposals that holds them back?
Well, currently, it's on the Air Force end, as you know, as far as always having fiscal constraints. So we're trying to figure out ways to make things more economical to use as we move forward with this situation.
And are there any legacy systems or protocols that need to be integrated or considered when designing EMP resistant communication networks?
Not that I could think of. You know, as I said, if we adhere to Mill Standard 188-125, that will help take care of a lot of the answers to that question.
Okay, and then another one from the email here. It says whether the development of novel materials for passive protection and the development of active protection systems are both within the focus and scope of the topic. So are you looking for new materials for passive and active systems, or does one carry more of a priority over the other?
There's no priority. And I noticed the Q&A, there was one more question there as well. Are there any weight restrictions, density? No, not at this time.
All right, I think we've gone through those. I'll look through to see if I've missed any on my end through email inside. But
Okay.
do you have any as well, Cody, or anything that we might have missed so far?
Nope, not for me. Just another call out. We have time left. If there are further questions, we'll give you just another moment or two if you want to add anything else in here in the Q&A box. For Mr. Simpson, not seeing any right now. I will remind everyone that there is Go ahead, Tim. Did you find one?
Oh, thanks. No, I was going to see, while we're waiting here, if you could, Larry, um, maybe would you walk us through a day in the life of of the problem, right? Kind of if there's a way that you can identify what you're trying to accomplish, some of the pain points, and then what a potential like perfect or ideal solution would be, right?
It's really hard to do that. Basically, the natural events happen, and if we do have some type of solar event, it could damage equipment. So I'm just trying to look at different ways to prevent that in the future. And as we're doing that, the hemp protection, which is a man-made event, can also be looked at. If we're trying to perform a mission, we want to be able to work through that mission with these generators and HVAC systems and protected data centers. Because without the protection of the data centers or the generators and the HVAC, the data centers need to be cooled and they need to have backup power in case there's power not available commercially. So that's what I'm looking at mainly.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that helps a lot. Thank you.
Mr. Simpson, another questions come in through the Q&A. Do you see that there before you? If not, I'm happy to read it out.
It does cost money to work these programs. I'm trying to understand what your questioning is.
Yeah, so I can maybe help you out here, Charles. And so the question, right, is I've been down this road before. It costs money to work on these programs. If we know what the issues are, for example, with AMPS and LTPS, THAAD, PPU, then we can figure out what's wanted, some insights. So I'll have to refer back to this being a phase one, and this is a feasibility study. So in a lot of ways, right, there's advances in technology. I think everybody's well aware that commercial industry blows away the military and federal spending on R&D, and so the pace of innovation and technological development is increases so much faster on the commercial side, right? And so what that means is that the DoD and a lot of folks inside the federal space don't necessarily have a good understanding about the unknown unknowns that are out there and what might be developed. So this is an attempt to remedy that very, very first step of, hey, can we throw $180,000 in 6 months to companies that have potential applications of their technology, and we don't know how it might necessarily be applied. We don't know necessarily like the specific thresholds and objectives and the milliseconds and the voltages and all that stuff outside of the 180 at 125. But it's going to be can we find promising technologies and then award those companies $180,000 in 6 months of time to sit down with the government to see if there's a there, and then refine the scope for their technologies. And then if there is a there, then we can, the proposal for the phase two follow on occurs. And that's where there's going to be a $1.8 million phase two and up to a 24-month period of performance. So that's whenever there's going to be the application of the technology to get after solving the problems. But that can't occur until that 6 months of problem curation and feasibility study occurs. Does that answer your question, Charles? Okay, awesome. And Larry, I can speak to this one too, but in terms of the scope rate of the blueprint that we put together, for this particular topic, it's funded for 6 phase ones, which are $180,000 each, and then 2 phase twos, which is up to $1.8 million in a 24-month period of performance.
Copy that. Thanks.
Any further questions from the companies that are here today? While I'm giving you a moment for that, just be aware that, of questions that come in starting September the 20th will need to be directed to the Defense Cyber Sitter Innovation Portal, DCIP, and we will not be able to answer questions starting on that date. So just be aware of that. And also, while we're giving you one or two more moments, do be aware that as the CCIT initiative of the government has hired us at SBCC, you can find our website and our referral network at smallbcc.com. Joel, if you can put that in the chat, that might be helpful for them to have a quick link there, smallbcc.com. And if you click that, and not only can you learn a little bit about how we're helping bring your technologies into the Air Force, but there's a join our referral network button where in just a matter of seconds, you can enter some basic information. It'll put you in our system. And then you'll be there when we're ready to reach back out and address topics that are under your purview. Another question's come in. Larry, what's the time frame for the award? I assume the CRA might delay the award since these SIPR proposals would be a new start. Is that correct?
Tim would have to answer that one. I'm not sure about this. That's your guys' question.
So I'll have to ask Dayton to supplement this after I finish, but the official opening of this solicitation, as I'm tracking, is 20 September. I don't have the closeout date in front of me. It's usually about a month, and that's where I'll ask Dayton to jump in. From there, usually the contracting actions will have a notice of award, whether select or non-select, generally within 2 months after the closeout. It may be longer, it might be shorter, but in terms of the funding for this, it was already requested previously by AFWERX or through AFWERX rather, and so it's already been earmarked from that. So in terms of new starts and all that other stuff, the funding is already secured to make the awards. However, we're following the award template. If you've had any sort of experience with the AFWERX programs, it's generally the 60 to 90 days after the award is closed that you'll have a notification, and that should come through DCIP.
Yeah, and Tim, while you were answering that, Dayton did put in the chat there the September 20 open, the October 18th close, suggested award date of January 16, and the award deadline of April 16 of 2024. So yeah, thank you for that question, and team for pulling up those answers quickly.
Hey Tim, would I be able to use you as a middleman up until the 20th if answers come in? Questions come in to provide answers. That way I can work with one person.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we can aggregate all the questions and things. I can we'll drop Cody's email and then mine as well. And then if anything comes in between the 20th, we'll make sure that we get them to you and get a response back out.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Joel, if you want to go ahead and put those in there, Cody.Ray@smallbcc. Yep, there you go. He's way ahead of me. Thank you. Tim, you put it in. Okay, very good. Looks like, yeah, too quick. Any more questions? You get one more chance here before we draw this to a close. Do want to say we appreciate your time and your interest today. We do look forward to working with you, help your company grow, to find a good long-term partner in the United States Air Force, and help our military grow and be more efficient and effective. So thank you again for your time. We appreciate it. And we'll go ahead and end our call now.